5:12 local time. The sea is calm, almost too calm. A U.S. Navy carrier strike group moves steadily across the open ocean. At the center of the formation, the aircraft carrier cuts through the water with quiet confidence, huge, controlled, and almost silent. Its flight deck stretches across the sea like a floating airfield, while escort ships hold their positions with exact precision along the outer screen. Behind the carrier, a cruiser remains slightly aft, covering the rear sector. High above the horizon, an airborne early warning aircraft circles in a slow, disciplined pattern, its radar watching hundreds of miles of open water. Everything looks routine. Then the sonar room picks up something unusual, a faint metallic rhythm, soft, slow, mechanical. At first it blends into the endless noise of the ocean, distant currents, shifting layers of water, and the low vibration of the carrier's own propellers echoing beneath the surface. But the sonar technician stops. He adjusts his headset and listens closer. The sound repeats, a steady pattern of rotating blades moving through the sea. He narrows the frequency filter and isolates the signal. The shape becomes clearer on the screen. Propeller cavitation. A submarine. The technician leans forward, studying the waveform as it scrolls across the monitor. Then his expression changes. Another signal appears, slightly offset from the first. A second propeller rhythm. Different blade spacing. Different acoustic signature. 2 submarines. The room goes quiet. The technician runs another scan across the acoustic spectrum. Then, from the darkness beneath the ocean's surface, a third signature emerges. 3 separate contacts. 3 submarines moving slowly below the strike group. The sonar supervisor steps closer. Repeat classification. The technician cross-checks the acoustic library. Blade count, rotation rate, hull resonance. The system begins comparing the data against known submarine profiles. Seconds pass, then the classification appears. Iranian diesel-electric submarines, 3 of them, and they are already inside the outer defensive screen. Above them, the aircraft carrier continues forward at a steady speed, unaware that 3 silent contacts have slipped beneath the protective perimeter of the formation. Inside the carrier's combat information center, the sonar report arrives. 3 red icons suddenly appear beneath the blue formation on the tactical display. Distance, close to very close. The strike group commander studies the screen carefully. Submarines almost never get this close to a carrier group without being noticed. 3 operating together is even more unusual. But the real concern is their movement. They are spreading out. One contact shifts toward the carrier's port side. Another moves slowly toward starboard. The third remains behind the formation. This is not random. This is positioning. Far below the surface, the lead Iranian submarine glides through the dark water in near silence. Inside the narrow control room, the captain watches the console as the targeting solution slowly sharpens. Above him, the aircraft carrier is enormous, more than 1,000 feet of steel, aircraft, and power moving across the ocean. But even something that large has weak points. An underwater strike does not need to bring a carrier down completely. It only needs to disable it. The captain watches the range indicator. Closer, closer, still closer. Back in the carrier's sonar room, the technician notices the change immediately. The 3 submarine contacts are no longer drifting. They are moving with purpose, closing distance while widening the space between them. The sonar supervisor looks at the tactical map and understands at once. They are forming a triangle, a classic undersea trap designed to pressure a large target from multiple angles. He reaches for the communications line. Bridge, sonar, multiple submarine contacts confirmed. 3 unidentified subs maneuvering inside the perimeter. On the bridge, the officer of the deck stiffens. How close? The answer comes back cold and precise. Within launch range. For a moment, the words hang in the air. Then, the order is given. General quarters! Across the aircraft carrier, the alarm sounds. A sharp electronic tone echoes through steel corridors and aircraft hangars. Crew members move instantly. Hatches are sealed. Defensive systems come online. Throughout the strike group, escort ships accelerate into protective positions. Helicopter rotors begin spinning on nearby flight decks. Above the ocean, anti-submarine helicopters lift off one after another, racing toward the suspected contact locations. But beneath the surface, the Iranian submarines have already reached their positions. Inside the lead submarine, the torpedo officer watches the targeting computer complete its final calculation. Range optimal. Bearing locked. The officer turns toward the captain. Target acquired. The captain gives a slow nod. Prepare tubes. Inside the submarine's forward launch compartment, heavy metal doors slide open. Pressure systems engage. Cold seawater floods the chambers. Everything happens with quiet precision. Above them, the aircraft carrier continues moving across the calm ocean, holding its course, unaware that 3 launch tubes are now aligned toward its massive hull. Back in the sonar room, a new sound suddenly cuts through the technician's headphones. A sharp burst of underwater propulsion. His eyes widen. Launch detected. Then another signal appears, and another. 3 launch signatures flare across the display at the same time. 3 submarines. 3 torpedoes accelerating through the water, all heading directly toward the U.S. aircraft carrier. Time to impact. Less than 2 minutes. Torpedoes inbound. The warning slices through the carrier's combat information center. Every display in the room turns urgent. 3 bright threat lines streak across the tactical screen, each one marking a torpedo moving through the dark water toward the center of the formation. Toward the carrier. The officer of the deck reacts immediately. Hard rudder, full power. Deep below the flight deck, the carrier's propulsion system surges. Massive shafts drive the propellers harder, churning the ocean into white turbulence behind the ship. The carrier begins to turn, slowly. A ship this size does not move like a speedboat. It does not snap away from danger. It changes course with weight, force, and time. But even a few degrees can matter. Across the strike group, escort ships shift instantly from routine patrol to full defensive response. On the destroyer protecting the carrier's port side, the anti-submarine warfare officer watches the incoming tracks on his console. 3 weapons, 3 approach angles, all converging with disturbing precision. His voice stays controlled. Deploy acoustic countermeasures. Seconds later, cylindrical decoys eject from launch tubes along the destroyer's hull. They hit the water, sink beneath the surface, and activate. The ocean fills with artificial noise, false propeller rhythms, simulated engine signatures, electronic echoes designed to imitate the sound of a much larger ship. To an underwater guidance system, the decoys appear like new targets, but the torpedoes do not turn away. Inside the Iranian submarines, operators watch their tracking screens. The torpedoes detect the countermeasures almost immediately. Yet beyond the interference, one signal remains too strong to ignore. The carrier, a vessel that massive, creates an enormous acoustic footprint. Even in a sea filled with decoys, it still dominates the underwater soundscape. The torpedoes continue forward. Above the waves, the strike group launches its next layer of defense. Helicopters lift from the decks of 2 destroyers, racing low over the water. Their rotors hammer the air as they move toward the suspected submarine locations. Each aircraft carries an anti-submarine loadout, sonar buoys, defensive torpedoes, and underwater charges. As they close in, the crews begin dropping sonar buoys in rapid sequence. One after another, small floating sensors hit the water, spreading into a wide listening net across the ocean. Inside the carrier's sonar room, the new data arrives almost instantly. 3 submarine contacts, still moving, still close. The helicopters begin tightening the search grid. One pilot leans toward his display. There, contact confirmed. The submarine is directly below, depth increasing, speed low, trying to slip away. Prepare underwater charges. Back aboard the carrier, the torpedo display keeps counting down. Distance closing fast, 1 minute, 50 seconds. The torpedoes are now deep inside the strike group's defensive zone. The officer watching the screen tightens his jaw. Decoys not pulling them off. The destroyer captain makes the call. Launch interceptor. From the side of the destroyer, a compact launcher fires. A small defensive torpedo drops into the sea and accelerates beneath the surface. This weapon is not hunting a ship, it is hunting another torpedo. The interceptor races toward the nearest incoming threat. On the sonar display, 2 signals close the distance rapidly. Then, beneath the surface, a sudden underwater detonation ripples through the ocean. The first incoming torpedo vanishes from the screen, neutralized, but 2 more remain, still moving, still locked on the carrier. Above the submarines, the helicopters begin their attack. Underwater charges drop into the ocean. A moment later, the sea erupts. Pressure waves roll through the water in every direction. Inside one Iranian submarine, the hull shudders hard as the force passes over it. Lights flicker across the narrow control room. Crew members grab the nearest rails and brace against the steel around them. The captain grips the console. Maintain course. Above the submarine, helicopters swing around for another pass. Meanwhile, inside the carrier's combat information center, the second torpedo suddenly begins to drift off course. The acoustic decoys are finally having an effect. Its guidance system detects several possible targets at once. For a brief moment, the weapon appears uncertain. Then it turns. The torpedo breaks away from the carrier's path and locks onto one of the decoys. Seconds later, the decoy vanishes beneath a tower of bubbles and white foam. The second torpedo is no longer a threat, but the third one is different. It has ignored every decoy. It has pushed through every interference signal, and it is still coming in fast, very fast. On the tactical display, the final red line points directly at the carrier. Distance, 500 meters. The officer watches the countdown. Final torpedo still tracking the carrier. Around the strike group, ships maneuver aggressively. Helicopters thunder overhead. The ocean churns with countermeasures, sonar signals, and underwater shockwaves. But beneath all that chaos, the final torpedo continues its run. Distance, 300 meters. Impact is only seconds away. The red line on the display cuts straight across the screen, heading directly for the carrier's hull. No deviation, no hesitation. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tension becomes almost physical. Officers lean toward their consoles. Every eye is locked on the incoming track. Everyone understands what is at stake. Aircraft carriers are built to endure extreme damage. Their hulls are reinforced. Their internal spaces are divided into sealed compartments to control flooding and keep the ship moving. But a modern torpedo does not need to hit like a simple projectile. It can detonate beneath the hull, creating a massive pressure bubble that lifts the ship upward before dropping it back down with tremendous force. Even a near miss can damage propeller shafts, bend steering systems, or cut power to vital sections. The carrier might stay afloat, but it could still be left unable to fight. Distance, 250 meters. On the bridge, the captain keeps his voice calm. Maintain the turn. The massive ship continues to pivot across the water. Its propellers drive hard, turning the sea behind it into a boiling white wake. Every meter matters now. Even the smallest change in angle could shift the torpedo's path just enough. Back in the combat center, another order is given. Activate acoustic jammer. Beneath the carrier's hull, a powerful countermeasure system comes online. It floods the surrounding water with intense acoustic interference. To the torpedo's guidance system, the ocean suddenly becomes confusion. False echoes, distorted frequencies, overlapping signals from every direction. But the torpedo keeps coming. Distance, 200 meters. Inside the sonar room, the technician listens through the noise. The torpedo's propulsion whine cuts through the interference with frightening clarity. Still tracking the carrier. The officer beside him watches the digital countdown, 180 meters. The jammer intensifies. For one brief moment, the torpedo's signal flickers on the display, a tiny break in its track. Its onboard system struggles to read the crowded acoustic environment. For the first time since launch, the weapon hesitates. Distance, 150 meters. Inside the torpedo, its guidance computer begins recalculating. The carrier's acoustic signature is still the strongest sound in the water, but now it is buried under layers of interference. The torpedo adjusts. Then it pushes forward again, 130 meters. The carrier's engines roar as the ship continues turning. Helicopters circle above the ocean like hunters searching through the dark. Destroyers close in, racing to shield the carrier's flank, but none of them can reach the torpedo in time, 100 meters. Inside the nearest destroyer, the anti-torpedo operator watches the incoming threat. This is the last chance. Launch interceptor. A second defensive torpedo fires from the destroyer's hull. It plunges into the sea and accelerates immediately, racing beneath the surface toward the incoming weapon. Now two fast-moving objects are closing on each other underwater. The incoming torpedo continues toward the carrier. The interceptor hunts it down. The distance shrinks rapidly, 80 meters from the carrier. Inside the combat center, the sonar display shows two signals converging at high speed. The room goes completely still, 50 meters. Then the ocean erupts beneath the surface. A powerful shockwave surges through the water. Above the surface, the ocean bursts upward in a towering wall of foam and spray. Inside the carrier, the distant shock makes the hull tremble. For several seconds, every sonar screen is swallowed by static. White noise floods the system. No one says a word. Then the interference begins to fade. The torpedo track is gone. The interceptor worked. The aircraft carrier is still moving. But the situation beneath the surface is not over. The sonar display still shows 3 contacts. 3 Iranian submarines are still maneuvering under the strike group. And now, for the first time, the strike group knows exactly where they are. Across the tactical screen, the commander studies their positions. The carrier has survived the first wave. Now the mission changes. The defense phase is over. The hunt begins. The instant the final torpedo disappears from the display, the atmosphere inside the Combat Information Center shifts. The crew no longer watches and reacts. Now they take control. 3 submarine contacts remain below the surface, but their advantage is gone. The attack revealed them. Every launch leaves evidence behind. Pressure changes, acoustic trails, disturbed water, and signature patterns that trained operators can track. Now the submarines are exposed. The order is direct. Engage hostile submarines. Across the strike group, anti-submarine systems move into full pursuit. Above the water, helicopters already circling the area drop lower toward the waves. Their dipping sonar systems begin scanning the depths beneath them. From one helicopter, a long cable lowers into the sea. At its end, a powerful sonar device sinks below the surface. The pilot holds the aircraft steady. Seconds later, the sonar operator hears it. A clean metallic return. Submarine hull. Close range. Very close. The pilot speaks into the radio. Contact confirmed. Submarine bearing 2-1. The helicopter prepares its weapon. A lightweight anti-submarine torpedo drops from the aircraft and splashes into the ocean. Moments later, it activates and begins searching with its onboard sonar. Deep below, the Iranian submarine hears it. Inside the control room, the sonar operator freezes. A sharp, high-frequency pulse echoes through the hull. Then comes the unmistakable sound of a torpedo closing in. The captain reacts at once. Evasive maneuver! The submarine angles downward as the crew tries to dive deeper. But diesel-electric submarines have limits. They can be extremely quiet, but they cannot outrun a fast-moving torpedo. The incoming weapon locks onto the submarine's acoustic signature and closes the distance. Seconds later, a powerful underwater detonation rolls through the sea. Above the surface, the water erupts into a violent plume of foam and bubbles. On the strike group's sonar screens, the first submarine contact disappears. Neutralized, but 2 remain. One of the remaining submarines immediately attempts to escape the perimeter. It turns sharply south and increases speed. Inside the vessel, the captain hopes the confusion of the battle will create a narrow path out. But the strike group is already closing the net. A guided missile destroyer accelerates toward the submarine's escape route. Its sonar array locks onto the target almost immediately. The destroyer captain gives the order. Launch torpedo! An anti-submarine weapon fires from the ship and drops into the ocean. Its guidance system activates and begins the search. Inside the Iranian submarine, the sonar operator hears the incoming signal within seconds. Another weapon is approaching. The captain deploys countermeasures. Acoustic decoys enter the water, creating false signatures to pull the torpedo away. But the destroyer's weapon keeps analyzing the soundscape. It filters through the noise, ignores the decoys, and identifies the real contact. The torpedo locks on. There is no room left to maneuver. Moments later, a second underwater detonation shakes the ocean. On the tactical display, the second submarine contact fades out. 2 submarines neutralized, 1 remains. The final Iranian submarine dives rapidly toward the seabed. Its captain orders all engines cut. The vessel becomes silent, motionless, almost invisible against the ocean floor. On the sonar displays, the contact nearly disappears. The crew hopes the seabed will hide them. For several minutes, the water grows quiet again. Helicopters circle overhead, scanning the sea in careful patterns. Sonar operators listen for the faintest trace, any sound that does not belong. Then one helicopter crew notices something. A subtle disturbance, a faint metallic shift. Almost nothing, but not nothing. The pilot leans closer to the display. Possible contact bearing 090. Another sonar buoy drops into the water. Seconds later, the signal sharpens. The submarine is still there. It is trying to stay hidden against the seabed, silent and motionless, but the ocean has given it away. The helicopter crew prepares the final response. A torpedo drops from the aircraft and slips beneath the surface. Almost immediately, its active sonar comes online, sweeping across the ocean floor. The hidden submarine appears clearly in its sensors. There is nowhere left to go. Moments later, the sea erupts one last time. A powerful underwater blast rolls across the seabed. On every sonar screen across the strike group, the final submarine contact disappears. 3 submarines had entered the fight. Now all 3 are gone. For several seconds after the final detonation, the ocean feels strangely quiet. The towering column of water collapses back into the sea. Foam spreads across the surface where the last blast occurred, slowly fading into the dark blue water. Inside the aircraft carrier's Combat Information Center, every sonar operator keeps watching the screens. The displays update. One contact disappears. Then the final confirmation comes in. No propulsion sound, no hull vibration, no movement beneath the surface. The 3rd submarine is no longer active. Across the strike group's tactical display, the red icons that had appeared only minutes earlier are gone. Only blue symbols remain. The commander studies the screen in silence before giving the next order. Maintain sonar sweep. No one relaxes yet. Underwater combat does not always end the moment the screen goes quiet. Submarines are built to vanish into the deep, and experienced crews know that silence does not always mean safety. Helicopters continue circling above the water. Their rotors cut through the air as crews deploy more sonar buoys into the sea. One by one, the small floating sensors splash down, expanding the listening network around the strike group. The ocean becomes a wide grid of electronic ears. Inside the carrier's sonar room, technicians monitor every stream of incoming data. Each buoy sends acoustic information back to the ships. The operators listen for anything that does not belong. Minutes pass, nothing appears, no propellers, no cavitation, no movement. Only the distant echo of the strike group's own engines traveling through the water. On the carrier's bridge, the captain looks out across the calm sea stretching to the horizon. Only minutes earlier, 3 torpedoes had been racing through this same water, 3 weapons capable of stopping one of the most powerful warships ever built. Now the ocean looks peaceful again, but everyone aboard knows how close it came. Below deck, damage control teams move quickly through their checks. Propulsion shafts remain stable. Rudder response is normal. Hull integrity is secure. The carrier has taken no damage. Around the massive ship, the escorting destroyers slowly return to their defensive positions. The cruiser resumes its place behind the carrier. Helicopters begin coming back one at a time, touching down carefully as flight crews guide them onto the decks. Inside the Combat Information Center, the strike group's formation begins to stabilize again. But the sonar search continues. 15 minutes pass. Then 20. Still nothing. Finally, the sonar supervisor removes his headset and turns toward the commander. No additional contacts detected. The commander gives a single nod. Secure from immediate threat. Across the carrier, the tension that had gripped the crew begins to ease, but no one forgets what just happened. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. From the first torpedo launch to the final submarine contact disappearing, the battle unfolded with frightening speed. Every part of the strike group had been tested. Sonar operators detected the threat. Destroyers deployed countermeasures. Helicopters searched below the surface. Interceptors stopped incoming torpedoes. Layer by layer, the strike group's defenses responded exactly as designed. No delay, no hesitation. Back in the sonar room, the technician reviews the recorded acoustic data from the engagement. 3 launch signatures, 3 torpedo tracks, 3 submarine contacts, all gone now. Outside, the aircraft carrier continues across the open ocean. Its massive hull cuts steadily through the water, leaving a long white wake behind it. From a distance, the strike group looks calm again, organized, controlled, almost unchanged. But beneath the surface, far below the waves, the remains of 3 submarines now rest on the ocean floor. Their ambush lasted only minutes. The strike group survived without a single ship damaged, and the aircraft carrier, the main target of the entire attack, never even slowed down.